It's a new day. We see Michael sat on his bed, looking into the medallion Hoto gave him, which Michael is holding in the palm of his hands. He's looking into his reflection in separate coloured jewelled-like parts of the medallion. Suddenly, there is a flash of light, and it's young Michael staring into the amulet on a bed, with young Sam and a young Tara, all three of them gazing at the medallion. "What is it, Michael? It's so beautiful," says Sam. The medallion seems to glow in a dim candlelit room. Michael lifts the medallion up and tells him to watch. "Look at this," he says. He turns the medallion anti-clockwise, and then a clear crystal sphere at the bottom of the medallion begins to glow. He holds it steady as they look at the glowing. Sam lifts her hands up to her face in amazement. She says, "Wow!" Michael then replies by saying, "It only does this if I hold it facing a certain way. Hoto says one day it will lead the way to the chariots. He says it's a key to the chariots of the heavens." Sam replies, "Wow, chariots, heavens. What's a chariots?" Michael then says, "I don't know." Tara puts her hands on her waist and says, "Why did he give it to you? Why didn't he give it to a girl if it's a necklace?" Mike then replies, "Hoto said I was special. He said as long as I had it, I will always be with him." Sam looks around the room. "I can't see him," she says. Mike looks around the room, then looks at the medallion and smiles. He says, "He is here. I can feel him in here." Michael puts his hands on his chest. Tara rolls her eyes and shakes her head. "Silly boy," says Tara. Sam leans over and presses her head against Michael's chest. "Hello? Hoto? Are you there? I can hear your heart," she says as she begins to giggle. Look what else he gave me," says Michael. Michael hops off the bed and puts the medallion on. He shuffles along the floor and opens a drawer. He then pulls out a wooden pyramid and presents it to Sam and Tara on his outstretched palms. "Huh? What's that?" says Tara. Sam then says, "No, it's nice, but the necklace is more beautiful. There are no colours on that." Tara folds her arms and says, "It's a triangle, a wooden one. What's it for?" Michael walks over to the bed, keeping his hand steady so not to drop the pyramid. He places it on the bed between Sam and Tara, who are sat cross-legged. Mike says to the girls, "It may not seem as pretty as a necklace, but in the crystal realm, it's just as beautiful." "What?" says Tara. "You can't see real things from the real world in the crystal realm." "I can," says Mike. "Hoto has been teaching me to take this triangle into the crystal realm. I really have to concentrate though, and once I've brought it through, I can move it in the real world without touching it." "Wow," says Sam. "No way, how?" says Tara. Michael says, "Watch." Michael walks away from Sam and Tara and the pyramid, and then turns to face them both. Michael closes his eyes and puts his hands together as if praying. Suddenly there is a flash, and Michael is in a beautiful blue environment. A blue flat crystal ground and a blue crystal sky as far as the eye can see. Michael opens his eyes and can see the pyramid floating ahead of him, as if no longer brown and wooden, but golden and shimmering, with light streaming across the edges. It also has patterns etched on its sides. Meanwhile, in the real world, Sam and Tara are sat on a bed, watching Michael, who has stood up at the other end of the room, with his eyes wide open, staring into space. Michael smiles and puts his hands out in front of his chest and stretches out his palms. Sam and Tara look at each other, then the wooden pyramid. Back in the crystal realm, Michael looks at his hands and then looks at the pyramid. He stares at it when suddenly the ground beneath the glowing pyramid begins to ripple, then a column of blue crystal begins to rise towards the glowing pyramid and morph and warp into a shape as it rises. Within a moment, Michael is staring at a blue crystal version of himself. Both Michaels now stood in the same manner, but the blue Michael is holding the glowing pyramid, rather than it just floating. The crystal Michael then begins to walk towards Michael, carrying the pyramid on its outstretched hands. Back in the bedroom, Sam and Tara are watching in amazement as the wooden pyramid is floating towards Michael. In the crystal realm, the blue Michael stood right in front of the real one, their fingertips touching. The pyramid slides from the crystal Michael's hands onto the real Michael's, and the moment the pyramid is in Michael's possession, the blue crystal Michael disappears just as it arrived. Michael opens his eyes to see Sam and Tara staring at him, awestruck, and the pyramid placed on his outstretched hands. Suddenly, Michael snaps out of his daydream as the sound of an air raid siren goes off. "Damn! The patrol!" Michael says to himself. Michael puts the medallion under his mattress and runs out of the bedroom, down the corridor, and into the main room. Sam is panicking and looking out the window. She turns around and runs amongst the children and hugs Michael. "Michael, the siren! The bad people are coming," she says. Michael hugs Sam tight and kisses her forehead. "I know, beautiful, I know," he says to her. At the far bottom of the city, deep in a dead zone, a man dressed in combat-like clothing, with a strange helmet fashioned in the way of a dragon, and a red cloak runs across a pretty derelict road and jumps down a manhole. Then a man hid around the side of a tall building, also dressed in black and red, waves to the man stood on top of a building roof in the opposite side of the road. This man looks down into the building, which is part of the roof missing, at a group of men all carrying guns. The men are dressed in dark padded combat-like clothing similar to the gun rums, but they all have red bandanas on their hats, head, or tied around their arms. And on the red material is a symbol of a black snake, the symbol of the snake gang, or as they call themselves, the Snakes, but also known as the Opposites. The men inside the roofless room of the building are laying fuse wire away from some explosives embedded in the building wall. Once this is done, and everyone is out of the building, the man on the roof waves to the man on the ground. The man on the ground looks up to the roof of the building he is hiding behind, and sees someone leaning over the edge. The person signals back to him, then disappears away from the edge. The trundle of heavy vehicle caterpillar tracks can be heard, and engines can be heard coming from down the road. The man hid round the side of the building pokes his head around the wall and can see two of the vehicles draw near. They are heavily armoured and have windows at the front, and are large, like armoured vans with tank trucks and huge guns on top. The man begins to get anxious and hides back behind the wall, then clutches his machine gun and begins to deeply breathe. Then as the vehicles draw near, he runs out at them, shooting as he runs past. The two tank-tracked vehicles come to a halt, and their large guns swing round to target the man and return fire with a hail of plasma shots. The man gets hit and crashes to the ground spasmodically. The armoured vehicles move their guns around and scan in their surroundings, looking for other targets. The vehicle's engines begin to rev up again, then BOOM! Large explosions from below the vehicles disable them, ripping off their tracks. The armoured vehicles swing their guns around frantically looking for their attackers. But the vehicle's rear doors swing open and soldiers begin to jump out. A door on the roof opens and a soldier begins to operate the large gun manually. The soldiers are dressed in suits of armour, covering their whole bodies, that are shiny and plastic in appearance. Their heads and faces are completely covered too, with dark porthole-like goggles and a strange flat antenna attached to the left of their helmets. Each are carrying a stranger-looking gun. Then boom, boom, boom! The walls of surrounding buildings explode and topple towards the vehicles and troops as the snakes set off more explosives. The soldiers on the vehicle gun begins to shoot hectically as another leaps down into the vehicle. Crash! The collapsing rubble crushes the vehicles and the soldiers. The groups of snakes appear from the buildings shooting at the remaining soldiers. One of the vehicles, still partially emerged from the rubble, shoots its gun but cannot move. A few snakes run towards the half-buried vehicle. Then boom! It explodes, sending the approaching snakes flying backwards through the air. The vehicle is burning wildly as the snakes approach. The second vehicle is trapped motionless in the rubble. Later on, back at the commune, Michael stood on Rubble Hill looking at the smoke rising from the burning vehicle as it towers above the buildings in the distance. "I don't believe it. Those crazy sons of... damn," Michael says. Other people have been stood on the hill with Michael and are now leaving as the smoke is beginning to disappear and no noise has been heard coming from the battle scene for hours. Michael sits down and stares out towards the desert. "Makes you wonder, doesn't it?" a voice says from behind Michael. Mike turns around to see the commune elder Eric stood behind him. "You stare out at the desert and wonder, what is out there? Is there a better place for us? Then you look, and you look, and you see a sun-scorched earth and a hazy neon sky, and you soon stop wandering," Eric says. Eric walks over to Michael and sits next to him. Mike says, "Yeah, until those soldiers show up, and you wonder where the hell they come from." Eric replies, "A dome, Michael. They come from a great dome out in the desert." Michael looks at his feet and then looks back up to the desert and says, "That's what Tara says. She claims the government built it many years before the Great War on natural disasters. As far as legends go, it has trees and plants growing in it, and all that's needed to live and thrive." Eric says, "It's no legend, Michael. It's true. The oldest people in the city, those who lived before the Great War and disasters, remember the time when the dome was constructed. The politicians said it was as a great headquarters of resistance against the aliens if they attacked." They both look to the desert. "Of course, this was a lie," says Eric. "It was to protect themselves from the harm of the great disasters. The governments of Earth betrayed their own people. They kept us in the dark of what was truly going on." Michael then says, "Master Eric, what are we going to do now? If the snakes have a hold of those soldiers' weapons, we're in trouble." Eric looks at Michael and frowns and faces the desert. So he told you, did he? It's okay, Michael. We have a plan." Eric sighs as after his remark. "Plan? You don't sound too sure, says Michael. Eric then says, well, after your people's commune was destroyed in the desert, in fear of the survival and in keeping of the prophecy, your people left the commune and travelled for many miles until you arrived here. By the time your people arrived, the city was in conflict. Mike says, you mean the gunrooms and the snakes? Eric replies, yes, but nonetheless the gunrooms are very strong in numbers and maintained to keep a peace deep within this territory. A new order was created, but when your people arrived with tales of Hoto and the attack on the commune, people were scared. People were scared and didn't want to acknowledge what your people had to say. They thought you might bring trouble from the government soldiers with your arrival. Many people blamed the Soltarians, Hoto's race, for the apocalypse. Some just didn't know and don't want to know. But some of us did, so we built the new commune, here in the city, on the old park, in the hope that the day of rescue will one day come. This, as you know, split our society up. Those who believe in hope and the prophecy Hoto told your people, and those who didn't. And now, as prophecy dictates again, we are in fear of our safety and survival here in the city. Just like your people before, we have to leave our home and travel through the desert in the hope we can find a place of refuge until the great rescue comes. Michael holds his head in his hands and a tear streams down from his eye and drips off of his nose. Eric puts his hand on Michael's shoulder. Don't worry, young man. We have been prepared for this for a long time. Just look into your heart and all will be revealed. Believe in yourself as we believe in you, says Eric. Eric stands up and begins to walk away, then turns to Michael and says, the day of the rescue is near, Michael. Be strong and we will be saved. And with that, Eric makes his way down the hill. An hour or so later, Michael climbs down Rebel Hill and sets off home. He walks through the commune before doing so to clear his head. He gets home to see Sam and the other women trying to feed some of the children. Come on, Tim, open wide, says Rebecca. Good boy, come on, yummy, says Sam. Sam looks up at Michael as she spoons-feeds Tim and smiles. Tim is the biggest of the 12 children. He has thin limbs and long fingers and a large oversized head, but Sam loves him all the same. She loved all the children. The children are orphans or abandoned by their parents. It can be easy to help and raise a child which won't even acknowledge its own existence. To look at as they sit down together, they look like they are Buddhist monks sat meditating, but that is all they do, and stare at them too long, a chilling feeling creeps over you. Michael, are you alright? Says Sam. Michael stood in the doorway leaning against the door frame. I have a bit of a headache, beautiful, but I'm okay, he says. Why don't you go and lie down for a bit, love, says Sam. Yeah, I will. See you later then, says Mike. Sam smiles and watches Michael leave the room and head for the bedroom. Michael falls onto the bed and rolls onto his side. He fumbles under the mattress and pulls out the medallion and stares at it. Hoto, where are you? Says Michael. Michael sighs and begins to drift off to sleep. We see dreamy scenes of a very brightly lit room of chrome metal objects, a large ring with pipes and lights all over it. The pipes are carrying fluids from the ring to a pale torso, which is harnessed to the ring by large chrome clamps. The figure's ribcage is moving in and out as it breathes. Pipes and wires are inserted into the pale body and all along the figure's spine. The figure's legs and arms are concealed in a large metal coffin-like objects. Only the pale body and the face of the figure are exposed. The figure's head is firmly held in a shiny helmet-like device with wires spewing from it. The figure's thin, lit mouth lifeless. The tiny baby-like nose, with holes like nostrils, have tubes coming from them, and the giant eyelids shut tight, but twitch as eyes roll around wildly underneath. Michael then leaps awake, fighting to catch his breath. Quickly sitting up, he looks at the medallion still held in his hand, then wipes the sweat off of his face. He shakes his head and stands up and looks to the window. It is dark outside. He wonders to himself how long he has been asleep. He then leaves the bedroom and walks to the bathroom. He enters to find some cold water in the sink and washes the sweat thoroughly from his face. He reaches out for a towel, where one is normally hung, but there isn't one. He shakes his hand and dries his face on his top, then goes to enter the main room. Sam, have you got a dry... Huh? Says Michael. To Michael's amazement, the room is empty. There is no sign of Sam or the children anywhere, just their toys scattered on the floor. Michael rushes to the kitchen and notices a warm tub of water still steaming. He then looks out to the window to a frown, then bolts outside the house and looks down the alleyway that should be blocked by the old broken down school bus, but it has also gone. Michael holds his hands in his head as if panicking and turns to the commune guards at the roadblock. You two, have you seen Sam? The children? Michael says. The guards on the roadblock shake their heads as they say no. What? What about the bus? One of the guards jumps down from the roadblock and walks over to Michael. He speaks to Michael. Look, Sam, all the kids haven't left the house, okay? None of them have left. What is it? Calm down. Mike shouts, no one's left! Everyone has left! They're all gone!